Hey Manny, today I'm going to be reacting to a video from Ahoy. He usually does, he had a series of weapons in video games. He also had some, I guess, documentaries? I mean, this is going to be one of them too, but yeah, this one is called 2000. And I assume it's going to be 2000 games because in the thumbnail, the font was in a PS2 font, so... Yeah, the 2000s was wild in terms of like how many good games that they came out during that year, or I guess I don't know if it's gonna be like the 2000s or just 2000s in general. It's just year 2000 in general. So I guess we're gonna find out. And yeah, there's just a lot of games that I think like it was at the time where I was playing the most as well. So a lot of free time. Decided to play games, I guess. So yeah, let's just see what Ahoy has to say. Yeah, as usual, I would link to the video in the description down below for those that are interested. Ooh, so
2000 was an exciting year. It was 1990 no more, and a whole new millennium beckoned with potential.
Also, I'm trying closed captions because I've seen other reactors use it, so figured I might as well use it. And yeah, also the Y2K thing was a thing too. So I shouldn't say a lot of people, but a good number of people were freaking out about Y2K.
It was a transitional year for gaming.
Jet Set Radio.
A generation of consoles was coming to an end, and the
Chrono
battlegrounds
Splitters?
were littered with
Time
failed
Splitters?
machines.
DSX.
The 3DO, the Sega Saturn, the Atari Jaguar.
This music's nice.
It wasn't a console war.
Hopefully I don't
It
get
was a
claimed.
massacre. Nintendo were still standing. Their N64 had found a family-friendly niche.
You know, funny enough, I have never owned an N64. I think the first Nintendo thing I actually owned was, I believe it was the DS. No, it was a Game Boy SP. Then it was the DS. I never really gotten into the main consoles. I had a PlayStation and a PlayStation 2, but and I subsequently PS3 and PS4, PS5. But I've been mainly a PC gamer. It wasn't because of any like fan loyalty or brand loyalty or anything. It was like because of certain circumstances I was able to get the PS1, PS2 for cheap, and I've just been mainly getting PC games because I was able to play free demos and buy like those $10 discs. I don't know if they have them anymore, but they used to cost $10, and it said that it had like 1,000 games on it, and that took up a lot of my time. And on my gaming channel, I've also played some of them in the past. Maybe I should continue them. But yeah,
Particularly in the American market. A steady stream of Mario
Paper
games
Mario.
out.
That was 2000?
2000 gave us Paper Mario, Mario Tennis, and Mario Party 3.
Never played that one.
One of the biggest N64 releases was Zelda Majora's Mask,
Ooh,
a follow-up to the
I don't think
hugely
I played that
successful
either.
Ocarina of Time. And while Majora's Mask didn't sell quite as well, it garnered critical acclaim and a
I
cult
do remember
following.
this.
Another N64 classic, Rare released Perfect
Ooh,
Dark,
Perfect
a
Dark.
spiritual successor to GoldenEye. It lacked the Bond license but didn't lack ambition. The game pushed the hardware to its limit.
Yeah, I heard, like, for all the praise that GoldenEye gets, like, for the people who played Perfect Dark, like, for the majority of them tell me that it's better than GoldenEye.
The visuals were very impressive, but the frame rate less so. Compared to other platforms,
Ooh,
the N64 had
Banjo-Tooie.
relatively few releases, but the games that were released were generally of a high
Yeah.
standard. It was the home of the big mascot
Kirby.
games, like Banjo-Tooie.
Wasn't it? I don't remember when they discontinued, but it was like, didn't Nintendo have its like gold seal of approval? And now it's just like what? It was just like a Nintendo. It was like just a Nintendo seal that I don't know when they changed it, but Like the gold seal used to mean something.
64. But the biggest franchise at this
What is
time
M&M?
was Pokemon. In 2000, Pokemon Stadium
Oh
released
yeah,
in America
Pokemon
and
Stadium.
Europe, and quickly became the best-selling console game that year. It sold 1 million copies in its first month.
Jeez. In a month?
The only thing that could outsell Pokemon Stadium was Pokemon Gold and Silver for the Game Boy Color. On its first day of release in Japan, it
Pokemon
sold
Gold.
1.4 million copies. In its first few weeks in the US, it sold 2.9 million.
Jeez.
12% of all video games sold this year were Pokemon titles.
That's a
This was
wild
good for
statistic.
Nintendo, as they were facing strong competition in the console space. Mobile gaming was still in its infancy,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
only realistic option for handheld play was the Game Boy.
I mean, there was the Game Gear, but you need to like replace the what was it, like eight AA batteries every hour or so, because that thing unless we had plugged it to a wall, but then that really isn't a mobile or a handheld thing anymore, right? So yeah, what else was there? I know there was like the Virtual Boy, but I don't think that can be considered mobile. I don't even think that was portable. Like every time I tried it out at the store, it was just I mean, I guess for security reasons it was locked in, but
Pokemon was huge, and so Nintendo dominated the handheld
yeah,
market.
they did.
Nothing else came close to the sales of Gold and Silver, but there were a few other notable releases for the Game Boy Color. Metal
Okay.
Gear Solid was the handheld debut of the Metal Gear series.
Wait, it started out on a handheld? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of what am I thinking that was on PlayStation 1? I thought Metal Gear Solid was like PlayStation 1, but oh, I mean, I guess I'm interpreting it wrong. So maybe it says Metal Gear Solid was a handheld debut of them. So maybe like this was just the first one on the handheld, and there was like the PlayStation counterparts.
Wario Land 3 continued the handheld exclusive games featuring Wario. So, while Nintendo were buoyed by their handheld success, the N64 wasn't as secure in the market as they might have hoped.
No, it wasn't.
With a new generation looming, Nintendo were no doubt planning how to take on their
The
biggest rival.
GameCube.
5 years into its life, the Sony PlayStation was still doing numbers. It had outsold the N64 by a ratio of 2-1 and was dominant in the European and Japanese markets. Thanks to its popularity in Japan, CD-ROM storage
Fantasy
and
9.
support from Square, it was the place for JR.
The place where because I think I read somewhere, or maybe it was from a video. It was because it was much more easier to do it on the medium, and then you can get away with you having like hand drawn backgrounds, and then animations as like the attacks and all that stuff. So something like that.
PGs. Final Fantasy IX,
Final Fantasy IX is so
Vagrant
good.
Story, and Dragon Quest VII all
Favorite
released
Final
this year.
Fantasy, personally.
In theory, the N64 was the more powerful platform, but hamstrung by cartridge size and
Yeah.
memory latency, the PlayStation kept pace in the 3D stakes.
Which was why the N64 games, I think, at the time, it was like if you want to get a brand new, it was like $70-$80. Or was it SNES? I don't. I knew there, like the cartridge games were very expensive.
Third-person action games like Siphon
Ooh,
Filter
I
2
haven't heard
were
of that game in
standard
a while.
fare. First-person shooters like Medal of Honor Underground
Ooh.
tapped into the rising popularity of shooters on consoles.
Okay.
The textures were low-res, the polygon count low, and the controls often clunky.
Like I said, I was a PC
But this
person.
was the
so-
generation where
mainly.
3D graphics became the expected norm. 3D opened up the potential for new genres and allowed
Ooh,
home
Colin
consoles
McRae
to
Rally.
offer
Okay.
arcade-like experiences. The PlayStation had established itself as the home of driving games. It had Gran Turismo.
Yeah,
after
Gran
all.
Turismo was nice.
It had
And Gran
variety
Turismo
too,
too.
from serious driving simulators like Colin McRae Rally 2.0 to the crime-fueled Driver 2.
I played Driver 1, and There was so many loading screens.
You
So
were a
many.
sports fan, PlayStation had all of the big yearly franchises. NFL,
Never played
NHL,
them,
FIFA.
honestly. This I
Skateboarding
played.
games were surprisingly
Tony Hawk.
popular at this time. The Tony Hawk series was
Yeah.
topping the charts,
I have this on
and the
PC.
release of the sequel elevated skateboarding to
Like,
new heights.
The OG one
The
on
explosion
PC.
in extreme sports led to imitators like Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX.
Oh, I have this
and
on PS2.
set the stage for similar
Okay.
games on the forthcoming generation. While Nintendo had the lion's
Spyro.
share of mascot-led games, there were a few family-friendly titles that intruded on Nintendo's turf.
Mm-hmm.
The Spyro series had its third entry with Spyro Year of the Dragon, a
That was Crash
cutesy
Bandicoot
3D
too, right?
platformer. And the popular Crash Bandicoot
Yeah.
series had Crash Bash, a party game in the Mario Party mold.
I never played Crash Bash though.
In short, the PlayStation had more games suitable for more ages. The games were cheaper, cooler,
Yeah.
and more varied than anything else on offer. It also helped that it was easier to find pirated games. Sony were newcomers to the console scene, and in less than one generation had installed themselves as king. And if that wasn't enough,
I feel like, I mean, in the console fanboy wars, that there are two other groups that would disagree.
they were preparing to unleash a devastating blow to their rivals.
Well, maybe at the time,
Meanwhile,
they were
the
dominant.
PC was doing quite well,
Yeah,
while the
PC
console
gaming.
wars were brutal.
Like PC. Ooh, what a time to pause. Like PC gaming was very unrestricted. Let's just say, because you really didn't have to fit the game in like one disc, so to say. I think. And then don't get me started about the box sizes. You had those, what was it, the trapezoid boxes from Eidos that had like Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Tomb Raider. That was really interesting to store. I still have two of them personally, in like the physical boxes, and I regret throwing away my Half-Life one. That's like one of my regrets, but yeah, it is what it is. I needed the space, and I wasn't that into like the prices of games at the time. Like I needed space, and boxes need to go. So yeah,
Computers had long since consolidated to IBM compatibles.
there's a lot
The closest
of
rival
PC
was
games
Apple,
too.
who had been struggling for years and were only starting to make a
A lot
recovery.
of DOS games, a lot of
As
early
far as
Windows
computer
games.
gaming was concerned, the PC was the only choice. And over the last decade, they had become a common purchase for the home.
Yep.
So with an install base in the tens of millions, there was a sizable audience for PC games.
Oh, gateways.
The biggest selling PC game of
The
2000
Sims.
was The Sims, a life
Oh, that
simulator
came out in
game from the
2000,
creator
wow.
of SimCity. It was a
Okay.
unique game that appealed to an unusually wide audience, and
Yeah.
it did rather well as a result, selling 6.3 million copies by
Jeez.
2002.
In 2 years.
There were many expansion packs and sequels
Oh,
that
yeah.
followed.
Oh yeah. Diablo 2.
Another hotly anticipated game was action RPG Diablo 2.
I think like this was when Blizzard was on top of its game, right? You had, I mean, granted we didn't really know too much of the internal and how they were compared to nowadays, but yeah, like when I visited Korea, like every PC cafe had Diablo 2, it had StarCraft, and I believe Counter-Strike. I could be wrong about that, but I know for sure it had Diablo 2 and StarCraft on every PC.
Blizzard's follow-up to 1997's Diablo. RPGs had long been a staple of PC gaming, and Blizzard had a great reputation at the time.
Oh, maybe
with
it was
the success
Warcraft.
of Warcraft and StarCraft.
Warcraft
So,
3, maybe?
It's perhaps
I don't know.
unsurprising
It's been
that
a
Diablo
while.
2 ended up as the fastest-selling computer game ever.
It was really good.
CRPG players were spoiled for choice, really. This year also
Baldur's
had
Gate 2?
Baldur's Gate 2 from BioWare and Icewind
Wait,
Dale from
they came out in 2000 as well. Wow. And Baldur's Gate 3 recently came out. I still need to play that.
Black Isle. Another classic PC genre was strategy, and one of the highlights of the year was Shogun Total War.
Ooh,
A
Total
meaty
War.
slice of turn-based planning with 3D real-time battles, and the opening entry of the Total War series. The popular Command & Conquer series had a
Ooh, Red
return to
Alert 2.
form with Red Alert 2. After the divisive Tiberian Sun, the alternate Cold War setting was welcomed. Although,
You know, funny story about the Command and Conquer games. Like, I played them as a kid, and for what it's worth, I did okay in that. But I didn't know what bunkers did. Like, I believe there was like a thing that said like you should use bunkers, so I built them, but I didn't man them, so they were just there, and I was like, these things aren't doing anything. Why are they good? But yeah, it is
it
what
wasn't
it is.
quite as good as the original. 3D
Ooh,
stealth
Hitman.
action games were en vogue too, likely due to the
the
popularity of
nostalgia
Metal
of
Gear
this.
Solid. IO Interactive gave us Hitman, codename 47,
Yep.
an open-ended assassinate 'em up. And Looking Glass Studios released Thief 2, The Metal
Ooh,
Age,
Thief.
a Hail Mary from a struggling
tried this
studio,
once.
which, despite critical acclaim and healthy sales, failed to save the company from bankruptcy.
Oh,
One key advantage of PC gaming that the consoles hadn't yet usurped was online play. The internet was rapidly becoming more and more popular, and for most
Yeah.
people, the first, if not the only, device to be connected.
so we got Ultima Online here. So we got Team Fortress Classic here. Well, that's one way of dealing with a spy, just hugging it from behind. And I believe this is Quake 3 Arena, I believe. Let's see. Or maybe it's Unreal. It could be either one of those. Oh, it's Quake
Was
3.
the
It's Quake 3.
PC.
It's Quake 3.
Games like Quake 3
Yeah,
Arena,
here
Unreal
it is.
Tournament, and Team Fortress Classic had installed themselves as online
This game was so
essentials.
good.
And this was the year that
Oh,
Counter-Strike
Counter-Strike.
made its debut.
I played this and TFC on a dial-up. It was interesting, but I somehow managed to be able to do conch maps on a dial-up.
Backed by Valve and the Half-Life name, it found instant popularity. The realm-based tactical FPS remained popular for years afterwards, topping play count rankings.
Oh yeah.
The PC market was challenging.
What's this
however.
music?
The sheer breadth of software available meant that many games, no matter how critically acclaimed,
Oh yeah.
didn't sell
That's true.
particularly well.
Because you have so many, you have a wide variety of stuff that, and people like different things. So some people might like Diablo 2, they might not pick up Half-Life, so to say, but and vice versa, right? So while the sales individually might not look as impressive compared to games like, or let's see, companies like Nintendo or Sony, but I think overall it's still a pretty big market.
Take Deus Ex, for instance.
Ooh,
A
Deus
first-person
Ex.
action RPG that was hailed as the pinnacle of PC gaming, festooned with awards, and
I'm sure Daikatana would disagree, but then the people who play Daikatana will also disagree about Daikatana's opinion about Daikatana.
retaining a cult following today. It sold about 138,000 copies in the US
Oh,
in its
wow.
first year. There was
That
a lot
low.
of competition for shelf space, and the big
Oh,
boxes
yeah.
didn't help.
Yeah,
The PC
like I said earlier, like there were so many different sizes of boxes. Whereas with the N64, you had the cartridges in a standardized box. With the PlayStation, you have them in a jewel case. PS2, you have the standardized case as well. With the PC, sure, there's a relatively similar size that a lot of companies use, but also other companies use different sizes as well. Like I said, the trapezoid boxes, I think Croc, I have the physical version of Croc, and for a PC, and that box is pretty big. So yeah, it is what it is.
market had a lack of cohesion, and the
Yeah.
consoles were starting to gain ground. Even PC stalwarts like the point-and-click adventure were struggling. The golden era of
Oh,
LucasArts
yeah.
was over, replaced with an endless string of Star Wars games. Many great PC exclusives
That
of this era
sucks, though.
failed to gain the traction they deserved. The operative no one
You know, if this was made by Blizzard nowadays, this picture right here would be fruit.
exclusives of this era failed to gain the traction they deserved. The operative No One Lives Forever
Ooh,
was a
I've heard
deft
about this
blend
game.
of Camp 60s espionage
I've never played it,
with
though.
first-person stealth action.
I've
And
heard
it
about
was
it.
very good. It received critical acclaim, with some reviewers comparing its innovations to those made in Half-Life.
Okay.
It sold 36,000
What?
copies. Of course,
Wow.
some flops were more deserving than others.
Daikatana.
Daikatana came out this year too. It was supposed to be
Oh, the disappointment you can hear in his voice. Oh, that's wild.
Daikatana came out this year too. It was supposed to be the next big FPS from
Yeah,
John Romero to
it
exceed
wasn't.
Doom and Quake.
It
A
wasn't.
promise the game couldn't uphold. Iron Storm forecasted sales of 2.5 million, but its poor reviews scuppered any chance of a hit.
8,000.
It sold just over 8,000 PC copies in the US in its first few weeks.
I mean, to be fair, I have it on Steam, and I think I played it on my gaming channel a long time ago, but only for like one video.
History remembers it as one of the biggest commercial failures of the
Yeah.
era.
The advertising was
There
weird
was just
too.
no room for mediocrity. The PC had more games available than any other platform.
Oh wow!
The players
So this is why I'm not saying like this is why, but is this why when we see like IGN GameSpot rate things 7 out of 10 nowadays, that we think of it as bad? I'm sure there's other reasons, like they're trying to give a bad game the best rating they could because they're like quote unquote bought off or something like that. But yes, I guess 7 out of 10s have been a long time.
didn't have
Go on.
bottomless wallets. 7 out of 10
do.
isn't good enough when the shelves are filled with 8s,
Yeah.
9s, and 10s.
Yeah.
So the PC needed a new approach to selling games, one more flexible and with fewer overheads than retail.
Steam.
But until that solution arrived, AAA game development would become increasingly centered on the consoles. The worst was yet to come. The next generation of consoles had just arrived, eroding the PC's graphical advantage.
PS2?
The new hardware was ever more capable of handling 3D graphics, and provisions were made to satisfy the rising popularity of online play.
Yeah, I remember when the PS2
next
came out,
gen
like the
was a
graphics were
threat.
great. Okay. Oh,
First to market
Dreamcast.
was
Okay.
Sega's Dreamcast, launched
Oh,
the previous year.
The Dreamcast had so much potential. Like, I mean, I still own a Dreamcast and I still have some games, but yeah, for me, the controller felt fine. I know it was uncomfortable just to a lot of people, but for me, it felt fine, and it had the very unique save cartridges called VMUs, I believe, where you can actually play games on the cartridges because it had like an LCD screen and some buttons. Granted, it ate like one of those disc batteries very quickly, but yeah, that was unique.
Sega had struggled during the last generation, with a lukewarm reception to the Saturn and an alarming tower of failed add-ons for the Mega Drive. With Sony taking pole position, Sega couldn't afford any more mistakes. The Dreamcast was developer-friendly, able to port both PC and arcade games easily.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
powerful,
Gauntlet Legends
came
too.
equipped with a modem, and the price was fair. It felt fresh and new, and
Yeah.
had a fantastic array of colourful,
It was
interesting
neat.
games.
It was neat,
It had a good start.
but
Crazy Taxi was a
Oh, yeah,
perfect
Crazy Taxi
port
was
of the
fun.
arcade original. A fast-paced, zany 3D drive 'em up where you have to deliver passengers to their
ate so
destination
many quarters
as
I
quickly
played at
as
the
possible.
arcade.
It was a must-have. It showed off the next generation's capability.
It
and
looked
tapped
it
into
looked
a cultural
amazing
vibe
too.
in a way that few games can. The
Jet Set
cell-shaded
Radio.
Jet Set Radio was similarly cool. An urban
I don't think I
ride-em-up
played it
with
when it
jet-powered
launched.
inline skates and a killer soundtrack. Weirder still was Space Channel 5,
Space
a campy
Channel
rhythm
5.
game
I've
where
heard
you
of
repel
this.
an alien attack by matching actions. It's got a cool 60s sci-fi theme, and Michael Jackson even makes a cameo.
Ooh.
Most baffling of all was Seaman,
What is this?
which released in North America this year.
Seaman?
I'm not sure what drove Sega to make such weird games,
It's
but I'm
unique.
glad they did. There was nothing else quite like it, and
Yeah.
the Dreamcast needed a strong array of games to stand a chance.
I mean, it had Sonic Adventure. Yeah.
Exclusives were a big deal, and while Sega may not have had Mario, the Dreamcast was the only
Hey,
place
this
you
game
could
was
play
fun.
Sonic Adventure. It was also home to Shenmue,
Shenmue.
which
Ooh.
released in the West this year. An ambitious action-adventure life simulator game that was the most expensive video game ever developed
Oh,
at the time.
jeez. How much?
It was good, certainly unique, but not quite good enough to recoup its costs,
Oh.
despite selling 1.2 million
Wow.
copies. Still, it was only on Dreamcast at the time, so it served
think
as
it's
a
on
pretty
Steam
good
now.
incentive to adopt the system. The PlayStation may have had Gran Turismo, but the Dreamcast offered a strong alternative in Metropolis Street Racer,
Never
a racing
heard of
game
this
with
one.
an open world and innovative kudos scoring
It
system.
looks fun.
In fact, the Dreamcast had most of the PlayStation favourites covered. There was a port of
Oh.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2,
Okay.
and it had its own exclusive
Code
version of
Veronica.
Resident Evil with Code Veronica.
They need to remake this. I still have the physical copy of the Dreamcast version, but yeah, they need to remake this. They need to remake 0 and 1, and then maybe 5 and 6.
There were a slew of sports
Look
games
how smooth
with all
it's
of the
playing.
major sports covered. Some major franchises were notably absent, but passable alternatives existed. Honestly, the Dreamcast had a really solid library, especially
Yeah.
considering how young the console was. But despite their best efforts, Sega couldn't
Yeah.
instill confidence in the Dreamcast's future. EA weren't interested in developing for the platform, nor Squaresoft.
Yeah,
The
that
Dreamcast was
without
good,
squares is
great even, but it wasn't a PlayStation. Sony had built
Yeah.
a very powerful brand over the last few years. In a time awash with bad
Hardcore.
decisions and risky purchases, the PlayStation was always a safe bet. And now, it was time for the PlayStation 2. The PS2 launched in March in Japan, October in North America, and the following
Ooh.
month in Europe. Anticipation was sky high, with PS2 scarce on
Look, Dr.
shelves
Dre.
and $250 million in revenue taken on the first day alone.
jeez.
1.4 million were sold in Japan in its first month,
Wow.
and 10.6 million consoles globally in its first year.
That's amazing.
Sega already knew they were in trouble, but the strength of PlayStation sales by the end of the year made it clear that they couldn't continue.
Yeah,
So
that's
soon,
sad.
the PS2 was left standing as the only next-gen console on offer.
And then the
It was the
Xbox
logical
came,
choice.
right?
It could play DVDs after all, and cost about the same as a standalone
Yeah.
DVD player anyway.
I think that was like, yeah, I think I saw one of like the advertisements, and I was like, why? You can get a DVD player, or you can get a PS2 which plays DVDs and games.
Usually for a new console, it was backwards compatible with the original PlayStation.
Yep, it was.
So you could carry on playing your favourites until something new arrived.
Mhm.
The complement of launch games for the PS2 was a mixed bag. Enough to cover most genres, but the best was still on the way.
Wait, what do we? I mean, I guess he's gonna go through them, but I kind of want to see
Enough
it.
to cover most.
So we got Tekken. I don't recognize which Tekken this one is, but we got SSX Tricky, which I heard was fun. I don't think I played it.
genres, but the best was
And then I have no idea. I assume it's a racing game. I don't think it's Need for Speed, but something.
still on the way. The annual sports games were perhaps the most important
yeah.
for the launch checklist. EA had the NFL, NHL, and FIFA franchises
That's
ready to
wild.
kick off the next generation. More interesting was SSX, a
Yeah.
snowboarding title that scratched
It
the
looked fun.
same extreme itch as the Tony Hawk series. It was originally a Dreamcast title, but after EA lost confidence in Sega's console, development shifted to the PS2.
Wow.
Driving games were another important part of the PS2's launch lineup. The next Gran Turismo was a year away, So in the meantime, there were a few other next-gen options.
What was this one?
Ridge Racer 5
Oh,
was an arcade
Ridge
racer
Racer.
from
Okay,
Namco,
so that's what it
praised for
was.
its tight racing and next-gen visuals, but criticised for a lack of anti-aliasing and limited content. Rockstar Games were gearing up to dominate the new generation, and had
GTA?
2 racing games on offer
Midnight
ready
Club.
for launch. Midnight Club Street Racing
Wait.
was a city
Midnight Club looked like this? I don't remember it looking like this at all. I think maybe because I have it on, or did it come in PC? Or maybe I think of Midnight Club 2, or my memory's terrible.
focused game with illegal races between exotic imports.
And you as a
Smuggler's
taxi.
Run was an off-road expedition with buggies and other rough-and-tumble vehicles. Fighting games were another popular genre.
This is a
Tekken
Britney
Tag Tournament
Spears.
was a spin-off from
This
the
was
popular
fun.
Tekken series with a new team fighting mechanic.
This was so fun.
Dead
it
or
looked
Alive
great
2
too.
Hardcore was
This
an
too.
updated version of the arcade game for the PS2.
Sadly, it wasn't as hardcore as the name would suggest.
Regarded as the best of the genre at the start of the generation. The new and exciting first-person shooter genre was starting to make headway on consoles, with the
Okay.
PS2 receiving a port of Unreal Tournament.
Okay.
Not a patch on the PC original, but it's hard to beat local multiplayer action.
I think I played Tribes on
The
PS2.
exclusive Time Splitters was much better received. Its
Or whatever
varied
the
gunplay and
Tribes games it
characters
was.
meshed with better suited gameplay to the console.
Also, it was Time Splitters, not Chrono Splitters.
For third-person shooting action, you had Armored Core 2,
Armored Core.
a mecha game by From Software.
I think I played the first one on PS1.
Dynasty Warriors 2 was a large-scale strategic hack-and-slash. The PlayStation had a reputation for great RPGs,
Oh
but
yeah.
the selection on offer at launch for the PS2 was underwhelming.
Oh.
Best of the bunch was Summoner, a 3D Western action RPG from Volition.
Volition.
From Software were also quite prolific, building on the success of their King's Field series.
Oh yeah.
They had 2 games ready for launch, Evergrace and Eternal Ring, although
Yeah, I've never played the Dark Souls games. I played Bloodborne on PS5, but like the first From Soft game I ever played was Kingsfield 2 on the PS1. That it looks awful, but it was fun. I thought it was fun.
neither were received particularly well. Dark Cloud was originally intended to be a launch title, but slipped to later in the year. A Zelda-style JRPG, it was
Okay.
best of its genre in 2000, although this wasn't the highest bar to clear. With retrospect, the launch titles for any console pale in comparison to those released once it finds its stride,
Oh yeah.
and the PS2 was no exception.
Because like what, Final Fantasy 9 was the last Final Fantasy for the PS1, right? And look how good that was compared to 7. I don't think that's like a controversial opinion. Like, look, the characters in 7 don't look as good as 9, just in general. But yeah, it's like as the console grows older, like developers find more and more ways to, I guess beat the system in a way, like find tricks and find workarounds that they wouldn't have at launch.
But the basic needs were covered, and many great games were in the pipeline. With the massive hype surrounding the launch of the PS2, Sony couldn't fail to make an impression.
Where's the 360, or where's the Xbox? Or was that 2001?
With a strong launch and practically no competition, Sony had put themselves in the driving seat for the next generation.
Yeah, the PS2
The
had
PS2 was a capable system with 3D graphics that looked truly next-gen.
a head start.
From the messy, brutal console wars of the previous generation, a clear victor had emerged. Sega had been bested and were planning their
Yeah.
exit from the industry. The 3DO and Jaguar, nothing but a distant memory.
Oh yeah.
Nintendo remained and were preparing their
Oh,
next-gen
the
competitor,
GameCube.
but they'd been in the shadow of the PlayStation for a while, and with the PS2's head start, they had a mountain to climb.
Oh yeah.
Even
Where's
the
the
PC was
Xbox?
feeling the effects of the PlayStation's influence. Although the last decade had been great for the adoption of the platform for games, the lack of a standard configuration made it difficult to target.
Just like you have, I don't think. So I guess the Xbox came out later. not in 2000. But yeah, with the PC, I guess or testing in general is just much more complicated because you have all these different configurations that a way a thing is coded, programmed, it might work in one configuration, but if someone has like a different graphics card, a different motherboard, I guess to an extent, like all sorts of different parts, then it might not run on that one. But whereas if you're developing for the console, you just have that one console, maybe 2 or 3 different versions if you count like the Pro version, the Slim version, and then the normal version. But in essence, it's all contained in like one ecosystem, whereas PC gaming is very opposite of that.
There is something to be said for the simplicity of a console, and the monolithic hardware was starting to become more appealing for both consumers and developers. Microsoft knew this, and with their financial might,
there's
they
the
saw
Xbox.
an opportunity to challenge Sony's dominance in the console market.
I guess I paused too early.
Essentially, a PC in a little black box, leveraging the rapid advancement of PC components
Didn't they have
into
the
a
Rock
standard
on
configuration.
this as well?
As the PS2 launched in Japan, Microsoft announced the Xbox. It wouldn't release until next year,
Oh, that's why.
but Sony's monopoly was going to be tested.
Imagine if the Xbox was actually this. just imagine. That would be very interesting. Very gimmicky, but very interesting.
And Nintendo were no longer guaranteed second place. It was an exciting time. Technology was cool, and there was nothing but blue skies on the horizon. The arrival of a new millennium had brought a feeling of optimism for the future. We could cast off the clumsy artifacts of the 20th century and embrace a new digital
hit
world.
clips. Oh, jeez.
Mobile phones and the internet were starting to make a tangible impact on everyday life. We had SMS, we had MSN Messenger.
Oh, yeah.
The internet was young and bristled with opportunity. This was the future, and we were living it.
I lived it. So many
Thank
good
you very much
memories.
for watching, and until next time, farewell.
Such a good video from Ahoy. He does so many good videos. Like I said earlier, the weapon series and video games, or I guess in media in general. No, not Wolfenstein. I mean, he also did Wolfenstein. There was a Half-Life one in the past as well. I think Monkey Island as well. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff he's done. But I mean, I guess this is my first reaction to him. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, it's just very nostalgic, just because of like all the 2000 stuff. And yeah, that's like it's like I said, it's when I got a lot more into gaming, because I've been gaming before that, obviously after that as well. But I think like it was around that time. Well, when did MapleStory come out? Because I spent way too much in that too. But anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, thank you for watching and have a nice day.